Happy Superman Day, everybody. Everybody joining us live at youtube.com/DJ Talks Trash. Oh my goodness. Sound off in the comments if you would, please. If for no other reason that I just like to know everything's working. Everything's working okay and all the stream is going all right. But this is, Sal, this is one of my favorite days of the month.
Oh, yes. Same.
Where we get to sit down and we get to talk about Superman movies. That's what this show is, Krypton Academy. I'm your host, DJ Wooldridge. With me, as always, is Sal.
Hey.
I do a similar intro for Only Stupid Answers. I'm like, with me as always, like in Only Stupid Answers, like with me as always is Roxy Trier. And someone in the comments was like, what about the times you do stuff with Sal? It's like that's a different show.
It's a different show.
If you're paying attention at home, playing the home game.
Yeah.
This show is where we talk about Superman. Specifically, this week, we are talking about Superman 3, which came out in 1983, was directed by Richard Lester, who you may recall from Superman 2. And it's fun. This reminded me a little bit, Sal, of watching the Ant-Man movies, where you watch Ant-Man 1, and you're like, I liked that movie. That was a pretty good movie. And of course, Edgar Wright was supposed to direct that movie. He already did a lot of the animatics, was a big part of the casting. It was deep into production when he left. And I think it was Peyton Reed came on after.
That's right.
And then you see Ant-Man 2 and you're like, ooh, I see the part, what Edgar Wright brought to the table.
Yeah, I didn't hate Ant-Man and the Wasp. There were some parts that I enjoyed, but Quantumania was a horse of a different color.
Totally.
Like it was just like, what? I mean, what have you done?
Well, and similarly, watching Superman 3, you're like, oh, I see the Donner parts of Superman 2. Donner parts of Superman 2 are much more apparent now.
All the roller skates parts are in this. Like, it's just...
that sequence goes on forever. We're getting ahead of ourselves. I will tell you this, Sal. It might surprise you to learn, Sal, that I didn't hate this movie as much as I thought, by which I mean, to me, this is just about as good as Superman 2. And as I tried to articulate that feeling, I think what it is I went into Superman 2 being like, I remember liking this movie, and being like, oh, it's not as good as I remember. Whereas this one, having never seen it all the way through and just hearing the horror stories on Rotten Tomatoes, that has a 29%.
Yeah.
And then you see, and you're like, wow, this isn't that much worse than, you know what I mean? It's expectations, you know?
The thing is, like, it is quite horrible, and I really didn't enjoy it, and I was very upset that I had to watch it. And there were parts that I remember, because I did see it as a kid, because, you know, when you're a kid growing up without comic book superhero movies, and you find out that there's 4 Superman movies, you immediately run to the video store and get them all.
You'll take what you can get.
And you watch this, and you're like, and I remember, I can vividly recall, if not in the instance where I was a child seeing this movie, certainly years later when I didn't remember any part of it, and I was seeing this, like I would see this movie in the wild. The image of Superman carrying Richard Pryor says everything about this movie.
Yes.
It should actually be the other way around, where it's like you can tell they thought that Richard Pryor was going to carry this movie, and he might be the worst part of it.
Well, and it's fun, and it's nothing against Richard Pryor, who is a generational comic. It's just one of those, why is he the main character of your Superman movie?
Right? What is this? Like, why did they do this? And it's like, because he's the most famous person we could get to be in these movies.
Yeah.
And it's really weird to see Richard Pryor just like, because it's almost like he had like a Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson experience with this movie, where he's like, you don't get to write lines for me.
Yep.
I get to do whatever I want, whenever I want to.
Whatever bottle I want.
Yep. I get to just urinate in front of everybody, and then someone takes it away from me. Because there's no way, if I don't have time to go to the bathroom, then I definitely don't have time to get rid of my waste.
Dude, which is a wild tangent, wild claim. Because you know how, specifically for actors, gaffers don't have a lot of downtime. You know who does have a lot of downtime on set? The actors. Anyway, whatever.
Yeah. I just, but yeah, Richard Pryor definitely was like, I get to say whatever I want, do whatever I want. Like, you can't touch me. And it's like, the impulse is there. I understand. Like, I wouldn't have Richard Lester write lines for Richard Pryor.
Definitely.
But like, Richard Pryor just he's not. What would it look like, ladies and gentlemen, if Richard Pryor saw Superman in the real world? It would look a lot like this movie, where he was like, "Oh my God!"
Yeah,
you know, there's that whole awful sequence where he like recounts to the villains, his experience seeing Superman, and I had what the Germans called Fremschaden, which is like Schadenfreude, but having secondhand embarrassment for someone else.
Yeah. It's interesting because I will say, I've had an experience a few times where you hear how great something is, like, Watchmen or Citizen Kane, and you're like, yada yada yada. I get it, but I live in the now times in the future, so maybe it won't age as well. And then you see it, and you're like, oh no, this is still amazing. And I had a similar experience with the first time I watched a Richard Pryor stand-up bit, where it's like, oh, Richard Pryor, one of the greatest. Yeah, but this is like 50, 20, however many years later. Exactly. And I watch him like, no, still funny, still really good. Just not in your not in your Superman movie. And the backstory is, if you're wondering why we're talking about Richard Pryor,
I would love to know why he's in this movie.
Because he's in the movie so much. That's why we're talking about it. But after an appearance of Richard Pryor on The Tonight Show, telling Johnny Carson how much he enjoyed seeing Superman and Superman 2, and Pryor jokingly stating his desire to appear in a future Superman installment, the Soulkinds were eager to cast him in a prominent role in the third film, using the success of Pryor in the films of Silver Streak, Stir Crazy, and The Toy. And he got a $5 million salary. And this brings
that's a lot.
That's a lot in 83. And it's a lot now. What am I talking about? It's a lot now. But it's a lot now, but like,
didn't The Rock get like $50 million for Red One?
Who knows? God,
you know what I mean? Like, that's
yeah. So, but here's the thing, gang, and this will get me to one of my overarching thoughts on this movie. I may or may not have. I'm not allowed to review it yet, but I may or not. I saw Craven last night, and the one thing I may or may not have seen a Sony superhero film last night. And it is interesting to watch a movie. The thing this movie has in common with that movie is it's interesting to watch a movie where you can really tell people are just guessing, and by people I mean the producers.
Yes.
The people, the Soulkinds in this case, are just kind of guessing at what makes a movie. And they're like, I guess Richard Pryor makes a movie. What's he going to do in it? Richard Pryor things.
This isn't a cocktail party.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, well, you get a couple of napkins, maybe a couple of bottles of booze and some crackers, and you got yourself a good time. There's a movie. Oh, we get Richard Pryor. We have the Superman license. And then it just poof, it happens. And it's like, they don't. Wrong. These things don't just happen.
Incorrect. And I think this might happen more now times than maybe in 83. I was not even in existence in 83. But this situation where you realize the people, the shot callers, just are continually tripping over their own dicks, and occasionally will stumble upon a Dick Donner who can make a movie for them. And then they fuck that guy over, and then we're stuck with Richard Lester.
They just, they have a vision and they want to execute it, and they do. And there aren't too many, or or they're just strong enough to overcome the obstacles in the way.
Yeah.
And it's hard. And we've seen, as we used an example earlier, like Quantumania, Peyton Reed was just not talented, strong enough, powerful enough, influential enough to push all the other dissenting voices out of the way, and make a singular vision. Although I don't know how singular your vision could be making Ant-Man 3 Quantumania.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny that it's like Peyton Reed, I think, is the exact type of director Marvel wants.
He's a Sean Levy.
Yeah, because he
100%.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that it blows my mind that pretty much ever since Man of Steel, the decision makers at Warner Brothers DC were in a panic to try and figure out how to make it work. Star Wars, after Last Jedi, just whatever. Sony, for some reason, pumping out Venom movies and Madam Webs and Morbius, and everybody's like, we're not going to fire anybody. We're not going to change up our management. We're not going to change up anything that we're doing. Yeah. And it's like, I mean, I guess good for you guys, I guess, that you're that confident. I don't know.
Or you're just that loyal. But like the DC movies, they all turned a profit, and people still were fired. Sony, they keep making just failure after failure after failure. And people, and they just go, well, I guess we'll try it again. We'll just get another influential actor to be the tentpole of the movie. And I'm like, but how? Like, but how? And I don't know. But I'm thankful that I heard, and I don't know how official this is. I saw it was on The Wire. That the Sony universe may be over.
Yeah.
I genuinely hope that's true. I've been predicting this for years. Where I'm like, I was like, Morbius will be the straw that breaks the camel's back. Well, clearly, Madam Web will be.
Yeah.
And then Kraven hasn't even come out
it hasn't
yet.
Even released yet.
And they're like, it's over.
Yeah, if they were in a screening like the screening I was in, the writing's on the wall on that one.
Were they laughing? Was there laughter, or was it like the rap described it, where it was just a room of silence?
No, there was laughter.
All right,
there was laughter.
This is entertaining.
Yeah. I can't review it yet. Sorry, gang. I can't. Stay tuned.
No.
Stupid Answers. The next episode of Only Stupid Answers, Roxy are going to be talking about it, and it was a ride. It was a ride. I'll say this. This is our Superman show. I shouldn't be talking about Kraven on our Superman show, but I'll say this because I think they released the first 8 minutes of the movie.
Yes, they did.
Okay, and so the first 8, I know why they did, because that's the best part of the movie.
Oh no!
And it was one of those. I didn't watch it. I waited till I watched the movie. And so that was my first time seeing the 8 minutes, and I'm like, this would be the great first 8 minutes to a Spider-Man movie where you're like, this guy's going to fight Spider-Man in 20 minutes. You're like, I'm excited to see that. That's
Is it possible? Because like we've heard the rumor that like, during the Marvel Sony spat, that No Way Home was either going to be a big Marvel movie or it was going to be an intimate Sony movie.
Yeah.
Depending on which way they were going to go, and that Kraven was purportedly going to be the villain of the quiet Sony non-Marvel movie.
Yeah.
Could it be that those 8 minutes were the 8 minutes to the No Way Home Sony picture?
Yes, possible.
Where they were like, this is how we introduce Kraven, and then we have a fun movie where Spider-Man's hunted by Kraven in New York City.
Dude, that's the thing that bums me out, man. I told Roxy this after the screening. Kraven and Rhino are 2 of my favorite Spider-Man villains.
Yeah.
So it bums me out, man. It bums me out. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
All right, we're off the beaten path, but you can definitely feel the reason we got off on this tangent is because you can definitely feel and again, it's crazy how common we've been making movies for over 100 years.
Movies, just movies.
How these how do you fuck it up? How do you fuck it up, man? Especially when you got one that worked. When you see, this works.
Yeah.
To beat this dead horse, you get Sam Raimi to do 2 good Spider-Man movies, and they're like, maybe I can get in here and throw in some ideas to really just fuck it up, just fuck up a thing that's working. We do have in the super chat. We have One Shot 2003 says, "Hey guys, love the show. If you were in charge of DC, what Superman comic would you turn into a movie besides All-Star?"
I wouldn't do All-Star. I would borrow from All-Star, and I'm hopeful they will.
Yeah.
But it ain't All-Star. I have the movie. I'm like, immediately, once I read it, I went, this is it.
Yeah.
And it ain't Superman Earth 1, which is written by Babylon 5 creator J. Michael Straczynski. And clearly, that movie, that book was a movie pitch. Like, clearly, JMS, 100%. Like, here you go. And they were like, no. And he's like, okay, well, then I'll just have someone draw it.
And part of a lineage of creators being like, what if somebody blew up Krypton, but it was a new character? And I'm like, well, one, not sure if having somebody kill Krypton is the right way to go. And if you do, it's Brainiac.
It's Brainiac. He's already there. The animated series did it perfectly. And even then, I think the animated series' approach was Brainiac's like, I didn't blow up Krypton. I just didn't save it because I'm like, it's just it would be futile.
Yeah.
Yep. And I'm like, that's a great villain.
Yeah.
No, it's Birthright. Superman Birthright from Mark Waid and Linnell Yu is a great Superman movie pitch. It has great imagery that would have been really amazing to see in a movie, but also is fantastic to see on the page. Emotional stakes, great contemporary kind of versions of our characters, while also being kind of sorely dated now. But easily updatable to today. Birthright is the way to go. For me, that's the template.
And of course, that was clearly a huge. We're going to talk about Birthright more because that was clearly a huge influence on Man of Steel.
Yeah.
And so,
if they got it wrong,
exactly. I think I don't. Which one would I choose? It's tough with a character like Superman, who is more iconic than any one of his stories, in my opinion. But I think, and I have a feeling we're going to see this. Is what was it called? Whatever happened to Truth, Justice, and the American Way? With the Elite. I think we're going to see that. But I think, for those that aren't familiar, that comics see Superman fight a team of anti-heroes called the Elite that are very clearly a thinly veiled parody of the Authority. And I kind of have a feeling that's where we're going with James Gunn's. We got a Superman movie, we got an Authority movie, and then we're going to see an adaptation of whatever happened to True Justice the American Way. But it's not going to be Superman versus the Elite. It's going to be Superman versus the Authority.
Right.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, the Elite are the Authority. If you 1-to-1. So,
Yeah, go for it. Go to town.
If you have the Authority, go for it.
Speaking of the super chat, if you want us to read your comment on the air, go to the super chat. And I want to, before we get into it, I think one of the things that I struggle with this movie that we're going to talk about today is I think there is a cool Superman movie in here. If instead of like knockoff Lex Luthor, it is Lex Luthor, and instead of like, and if because you can see the echoes, and I'll talk about this later, of how Brainiac could fit into this or Bizarro. If you committed to those things, those ideas. And I couldn't help but think about that as I was watching it. So I want to know in the chat, and specifically if you want me to read it, the super chat, let me know what Superman villains you would have liked to see specifically in a 1980s, like Superman 3 or Superman 4, and bonus points if you can pick an actor that was active at that time that could play Brainiac or play, apparently there was a version of the script that had Mr. Mxyzptlk. Actors that were active at that time that could play those roles. What villains would you like to see? Who would be playing them? Let me know in the chat. If you want me to read it on air, do the super chat, please, and thank you. And with that lead up, let's get into Superman 3. And of course, we open with our main character, which is Richard Pryor playing Gus Gorman. And Sal, you texted me earlier, like, I can't even remember his name. And it's a shame, Sal, because he just really disappears in the role. You know what I mean? He just really, as an actor, as a performer, Richard Pryor just transforms.
Yeah, into this Gus Gorman character. It's amazing. Yeah, I'm so glad you reminded me of Richard Pryor because I couldn't remember his name because Gus Gorman was such a, transformative character. Like Harrison Ford in The Killing Fields or Marlon Brando, obviously, in any role he occupies, but The Godfather especially. Richard Pryor just completely just transforms that role. Amazing.
One of the most iconic performances in Hollywood history. I think we can look back now and say
it's actually kind of weird that Gus Gorman doesn't appear. He wasn't like they transformed him into the comic books or into the movies in the future. It's weird.
It's maybe because we would have had to cut Richard Pryor a check because it's Otis. We can't, for some reason, we can't ditch Otis. Like he's going to be in the new Superman movie, but Gus Gorman, we don't have another Gus Gorman running around.
I know, Miss Tessmacher, but no Gus Gorman. Crazy.
Yeah. So we find out it's so interesting. This sequence is shot completely differently than the rest of the movie. It's not grounded because it's Richard Pryor, but it's something approximating grounded where he's turned down, he's in unemployment, he no longer applies to unemployment, but never fear. All right, because I think it's like a matchbook or something, but basically he sees an ad. Hey, you want to make money? Easy peasy. Just become a computer programmer.
Oh, okay. We'll do.
Whoa. I should have thought of that. Becoming a computer programmer.
Yeah. One of my friend's dads, actually, I remember him sitting us down one time in high school, and he was just like, get into computers. And I was like, first of all, I use them all the time.
Yeah.
Like, I'm already kind of in computers. But specifically, what do you mean?
Well, and at that point, when you're talking to a young person, you're like, go do
plastics.
The years of studies it takes to become good at this thing, as opposed to just go like as a job at a grocery store. Hey, just go pick up a computer programming job.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Like, oh, great. What language do you speak?
Yeah. And this is going to be slotted into, and we're going to open up this slot a few times through this movie of people don't know how the computers work in the 1980s. They don't understand them.
And I think that's what it is. I think it was like, they don't know, so they have Richard Pryor play a computer. He doesn't know either.
Yeah,
and so I assume it's just as easy as that. But also let me demonstrate how much I don't know about computers by having everyone use one and not use them properly. Yeah. It's just Star Trek 4.
Yeah.
Where,
my favorite moment. Oh, sorry, finish with that.
Or just where Scotty uses the computer and he's like,
computer.
Hello, computer.
Yeah.
And then just use the keyboard and he just taps away, gets charts and graphs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Nobody making this movie knows how computers work, clearly. And we're going to get into that more later. But then we cut to the sequence that you hinted at, Sal, which is this unending comic, air quote, sequence of, it's basically like a Three Stooges routine slapstick where like, Lorelei, every one of these movies we need to have our villain have a banging mole or whatever, like a hot sidekick. She walks by, distracts a guy, and it ends up causing this cavalcade, like a Looney Tune sequence.
Yes.
Where in Superman 1, where we get this, space, and we get the John Williams score as the credits fly in. By Superman 3, they're lazily superimposing the same flying in credits over this like guy on skates tripping over a blind guy whose dog walks into traffic. Oh my God.
Yeah. No, it's like a Rube Goldberg situation that like it's just like the thing is, and I constantly was reminded of it like as I'm watching it, because I was like, this is 83.
Yeah.
Like there are better movies coming out. And then I started looking at like the highest grossing movies, and I'm like, oh, never mind. This is completely in keeping. Like one of the number one movies was Deathstalker.
Mm-hmm.
Blood Heat was huge at that time. And of course Return of the Jedi, but like those are outliers. Those are not studio movies. Like Risky Business. Yeah. So it's like you're making a big budget. And remember, don't forget, they were talking about this earlier. Like I remember seeing I saw Russell Crowe talking about this, promoting Craven of all things. And he was like, don't forget that like up until recently, sequels were worse than their predecessors and less expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So like, obviously 2 is going to be more expensive because of all the production hassles they ran into, but like 3 is where they're like, we can get back on track. We'll make some money on the back end. We can save some money on the front end by having a lot of long, boring conversations and stuff. And he doesn't have to fight anybody interesting.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of like problems with this movie where it's not Superman 3's fault.
Yeah,
it's the era's fault.
Well, and it's funny, and I think that's something worth pointing out, is because we tend to look back, and I think this is true of nostalgia in general, which I think is why largely I find nostalgia to be pretty toxic.
Yeah.
But you look back and like, oh, things were so much better, like movies were so much better.
Yeah.
And I did think of, perhaps when I was sitting in the theater last night, I did think about how we did live a little bit, at least with superhero cinema, but I do think in general, in a little bit of a golden era in like the 2010s, the late 2008 to like let's say 2019, that decade. But beyond that, you have a tendency to look back, oh, things were so much better, but you're thinking about all the good ones and not all the trash that was released around the good
exactly
ones. There's always been trash.
You're thinking of Octopussy, but what you really need to be thinking about is Never Say Never Again. Both two Bond movies that came out in the same year, this year, and are both kind of like, I don't know what I like better.
And I do, but I do think we're, as an audience, we are being robbed a little bit of I was too young for this, but like trying to imagine like being able to see be on the ground floor of something, like see the first Ghostbusters for the first time.
How groundbreaking that must have been. Like what a freaking, like, people might have hated it because of how different it was from what you were used to seeing in the theater.
Yeah, but now we're so choked with classic IP that, like, when was the last time you had that experience of like discover, oh, this is a new thing that I get to love now?
Yeah. It's rare and practically non-existent. You're just not going to see that experience. And worse yet, you're not going to see it with the thing that had that feeling in the first place.
Yeah.
Like you're not going to see Ghostbusters 4 and go, wow.
No, and I think that's something that especially people on the internet tend to forget, is it doesn't matter. A lot of yelling
what
with
it's
Star
called.
Wars. Yeah, a lot of yelling with the Star Wars, it's like you realize it doesn't matter what they do, you're never going to have that feeling again.
Yeah,
you're chasing a dragon that you're never going to catch.
That's right.
And you maybe need to move on or let them do new things, try new things. I don't know.
Or write something new. Like contribute.
Yeah. So, so this sequence goes on. This comic sequence goes on for a long time. The only thing worth salvaging out of it is there's a bit where, by the way, chaos is ensuing on the street, and Superman is walking by it. Clark Kent is walking by it, does not get involved until somehow a guy's car gets trapped over a fire hydrant and starts filling with water. That's when he gets involved. The only thing we're salvaging out of this whole sequence is he changes in a photo booth, and a little kid like puts money in it, so it takes pictures of Clark Kent changing to Superman. Superman sees it, tears off the one of him as Superman, keeps the rest. Like that. The only thing good out of this entire sequence is that bit.
Yeah, I agree. I
and then he saves the guy in the car, and you're like, good, it's over. it's not over. It keeps going.
Yeah. No. I was literally like, oh, this should be done.
Yeah.
Or is he going to go back and deal with all the other things?
It just keeps going. It's insane. Anyway, so that goes on for a long time. And then we get to we go to the Daily Planet where we spend, and there's a moment where it looks like, hey, we're actually going to spend some time with Jimmy Olsen this movie.
Yeah.
We're not really.
He is in it.
He is in it
more than you could say for other classic characters from
yes.
Superman.
Yeah. He is in it. And he's there to give us some backstory on characters we're not going to meet for a while. The Websters. Or as I like to call them, Kirkland brand Lex Luthor.
What?
Yeah. That guy, it should have been Lex Luthor.
Yeah.
All right. We'll get to put a pin in the Websters. We're going to get to them in a minute.
Good.
We also get this whole bit at the Daily Planet is also how we write Lois Lane out of the movie. And if you're wondering, wait, why is Gene Hackman not back for Lex Luthor?
Yeah.
I will have you revisit a point Sal made that sequels were always cheaper. And if you're Gene Hackman, you don't need Superman. You don't need, but the reason it was given, and this was also apparently somewhat true for Margot Kidder as Lois Lane as well. Apparently, everybody was pissed off at the way they treated Richard Donner. They, being the Salkinds, the producers, treated Richard Donner in Superman 1 and 2. And originally, even Christopher Reeve wasn't going to come back.
At which point, you're not making Superman movies anymore.
Yeah, you're done. You stop. Because this is before the gritty reboot era where you hire Andrew Garfield to be your new Superman.
Superman with with a weirder costume. Yes, no.
So apparently, yes, Christopher Reeve had stated he would not return as Superman, as he was also angry about the firing of Richard Donner. Producers offered the role to John Travolta, Jeff Bridges, and Kurt Russell. I think Kurt Russell would be not the right casting for Superman, but I do kind of want to see it. Part of me kind of wants to see it.
I'm the same way, but when we did kind of get to see it, where like Kurt Russell auditioned for everything.
Yeah,
like he was everywhere. There is a screen test of him auditioning for Han Solo. And it's magnificent.
Of course it is.
Because essentially Han Solo is like a John Wayne character. Like he's like, he's so good. And it's like, if you want to screw with the timeline, if you were like, I've ruined pop culture. I made Harrison Ford not be Han Solo.
Yeah.
Nothing changes. Like we are exactly where we are today. If that happens, where it's like, Harrison Ford still has a massive career and he's Indiana Jones. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
Like no change for Harrison Ford's career.
What if Kurt Russell became Indiana Jones too? What if that was that? I don't hate it. I don't hate it.
No, it's true. Because, and here's why. Okay, right? Because George didn't want Harrison Ford to be Indiana Jones because he didn't want to work with anybody he'd worked with before. And the only reason why he had Harrison Ford was because Harrison Ford was a PA / like script reader for him during the production for Indiana Jones. And so Harrison still would have been that.
Yeah.
And he would have been like, oh, you know what? I never worked with you before. Let's get him in here.
Yeah.
Like, because also, and I think George would have been like, oh, I don't know if I want to work with you again. I worked with you on American Graffiti, but you know what? You're so good. Boom. He's still Indiana Jones. And Kurt Russell's Han Solo. It's so good. And you don't miss anything with the Han Solo character. It's just more cool.
One of the things that bummed me out about the sequel trilogy, the Star Wars sequel trilogy, is that none of the characters really felt like they'd moved forward at all. Like they'd never, and I thought it would have been really funny if Han and Leia were together. Clearly they were a bad match. They split up and now she has a new husband and you bring out Kurt Russell as the new, like he was the person.
Yeah, he's Dash Rendar.
Yeah, that would have been so fucking funny. Or even like, I think possibly even funnier, but this might've been too cute. You pull out Patrick Stewart. Like that might've been too cute.
Yes.
Wants to see it.
I will say, just on that same vein, Harrison Ford, Kurt Russell. There was something else in there. It doesn't matter. Maybe I'll remember, but for now,
we'll pull it back later. But anyway, so they all three of them turned it down. Shortly before shooting began, Tony Danza agreed to play man.
Oh, you might as well have cast Bill Murray. Like if for as big a departure as that would have been, because no one would have seen that movie with Ernest. Like no one would have been like, oh, that's a fun movie that I can't wait to see. They would have been like, oh, so it's a big stupid joke.
Yeah. So Lester begged Reeve to return the role and Reeve agreed. And there's the rumor is, and people have denied this and gone back and forth, but apparently the reason Margot Kidder's role was cut way down is because she was also vocally critical of the way Sal Gunn's treated Donner. So they kind of like punished her by like writing her out of the movie.
Yeah.
Which is a bummer. And it seems like this all kind of suck, if I'm being honest.
They
I don't
do
know
suck, but I don't miss Lois.
Well, we'll get into that. Because I will say there was a pang of that, like, again, man, it goes back to stuff like we talked about with Shang-Chi, where that back half, I really hated that back half of Shang-Chi. Yeah. But if you just made the dragon Fing Fang Foom, the comic nerd in me would have been like, well, this is salvageable.
Yeah, well, you know what?
Yeah. So similarly, as bad as this movie is, we very briefly get like the Lana Lois love triangle from the Silver Age, and I'm like, that's cute. Like I kind of don't hate that.
Yeah, I was, and I just love the actor who plays Lana. And
Annette O'Toole.
And she's, well, and I don't like Margot Kidder.
You know what, man? I at least as Lois Lane, it's Margot Kidder's not my ideal Lois Lane. No. And so I will say, in this world, go with Lana, dude. Go with Lana, or maybe feel things out with Lorelai. You know, see where that goes.
Yeah, right. I mean, I would.
Anyway, so this whole Daily Planet sequence is Lois is reporting something in the Bahamas or something, and that's why she's not in the movie. Clark's pitching a story. Movies and TV shows love this, like where the reporter does a slice of life story that I don't know if really exists in major newspapers, where he pitches a story where he's going to go back home to his high school reunion.
Yeah.
And you know, all that jazz. And Perry White bites for whatever reason, because I guess we need a movie to exist. So that's how we set up to him leaving and going back to Smallville, which is a smaller part of the movie than you think going in.
I remember it being a bigger part. I remember it being like a big deal, and I'm like, oh, this is over. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yes. We did get in the super chat. If you want me to read your comment on air, go in the super chat. Typical Spider says, hey guys, love these shows. Are you guys still planning a Best of X episode? All will be attending MCU University at some point. Happy holidays, guys. Well, we're still doing Mutant Academy over at patreon.com/onlystupidanswers. We just did our Deadpool and Wolverine discussion, so be sure to check that out. And I have discussed with Sal at some point maybe doing, I do like MCU University. I do like that. I wasn't going to call it that, but I do like that. Going through the MCU movies. And then at this point, we'll be doing that till the heat death of if we ever pull that Band-Aid, we'll be doing that till the heat death of the universe. We'll just keep going.
Yeah.
But now we cut back into, if you were wondering where our lead was, Richard Pryor, we cut back over him we find out that apparently, miraculously, he doesn't even know what he's doing, but he's an incredible programmer. What does that mean? He does the beat bloops better than anybody else. And then there's an insane scene where he's talking with a coworker, and they're talking about their paycheck and how there's not a lot in it. And he's like, well, technically it's supposed to be a half cent more, but they just round it down to the lowest number. And Richard Pryor says, does that go to the company? And he's like, no, it's just in the ether. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Of course it goes. It's not just out there as ones and zeros. It stays with why else would they round it down? What the fuck are you talking about?
Well, no, according to Office Space, which is where this movie is the most famous, that they rounded it off as an account where they just don't collect it. It's just not. Yeah. Like right now I don't know how they do it, but basically what happens is in Office Space, he gets the idea from Superman 3 to do this, where he's like, so instead of it being rounded off, it rounds off into an account.
Well, yeah, okay, that's something but
it should do.
What he's saying is that it's just out there. It's
right.
Like, well, no, the reason
not out there.
The money is in an account.
Right.
And they round it down so it stays in that account. This is basically the tamest version of wage theft there is.
Yes. Which they could have brought to the union, but instead they just, whinge about it. And
so this is master computer genius Richard Pryor. This is what gives him the idea to basically what Office Space is the smarter version of that, where now he just gets a second. Sally gets a second. Nobody questions this. The people that cut the checks, I guess we're supposed to understand it's completely automated. Nobody looks at the checks before they go out.
Right.
And he gets a second paycheck for, I have the number here somewhere, it's thousands of dollars.
Yeah. Which, no.
Again, file that under, nobody knows how computers work, apparently, in this movie.
Yeah. File that under, you're under arrest immediately. Like, there's no way they wouldn't notice that.
Well, to the movie's credit, first I'm like, this is egregious if we let this slide. To the movie's credit, they do notice, but I will say the scene where they bring it up is another scene where, like, okay, so you guys just don't know how computers work. Got it.
Yeah. I don't think they know how payroll works, for God's sake.
Clearly. So there's a bus. Clark and Jimmy are taking the bus to Smallville. They come across a massive chemical fire. Not only that, but in this building, they've got some sort of like aerosolized super acid that if it blows up, it'll wipe out the entire eastern seaboard. That I guess we're just working on. Whatever, man. No big deal.
I'm glad that was a thing that could happen. Like what are we working on here? How did you get the contracts for this? If it was like, oh, by the way, like if everything goes wrong, we kill 600,000 people. Like,
if the temperature gets too high, a cloud of acid will eat through everything. In a 1,000,000-mile radius.
Yeah, think about it on the East Coast. No.
So this is an excuse for Superman to save the day. It also is planting the seed for something later in the movie. I will say some of the Superman rescues in this are not, this one in particular, like he takes a big like smokestack and uses it so the people can slide down.
Yep.
There's some stuff in here that works, I think.
Yeah, it's fun. This is one of the more fun like Superman moments in the movie where it's like, oh, look at him actually like being Superman and doing stuff.
Yeah. He freezes an entire, because the
top of the water.
Yeah. So the water station blows up. So now the fire department doesn't have any water. There's a fun bit where like Superman shows up and he's like, get this man, fire chief is like, get this man a helmet. And then he sees it, Superman's like, forget the helmet. Never mind.
This is one of the more like Chris Reeve's acting in this sequence. Like there's a moment where he yells orders. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, like look at Superman. All right.
There's a sense, it's watching these movies, there is a sense that they don't know what they have with Christopher Reeve.
Yes,
because it's shocking, and I think it was true in Superman 2 as well, how little they focus on Clark and Superman as a character.
Yeah, well, and how the audience keys into that big time, where they're like, "Oh, the best thing about Chris Reeve is that he can like shrug his shoulders, and transform." Yes, he's good at that. He's an actor who's been in a lot of things and he's good at this. And I think that has everything to do with the directors.
Yeah.
Donner also included in that, where it's like, Donner's like, I'm making a larger than life epic. You're playing Moses. We don't need to worry about like Moses's like pathos, or if it is, it's about his pathos with God, not with his wife.
Mm-hmm.
But like, and then you have just diminishing returns in terms of lesser directors as these movies go on.
Yeah.
So, I can imagine Reeve being frustrated by that, having moments that explode out of these sequences. Obviously, there's a whole duality portion of this whole movie that you feel, it feels very like this was Reeve just being like, I want to do something.
Yeah, give me something, please, and thank you. So yeah, the big saves the day, stops the acid from eating the East Coast. And he does this like Sal talked about, he freezes like the top layer of a lake, and then he takes it over the fire, and then it becomes like rain, which part I was like, I don't know that like a slight drizzle
is going to put out that
going to put out that fire. You need that more direct at the base fire hose thing going on, but whatever, man. Use your freeze breath, dude. I don't know.
It's a super moment that at least is, it's at least Superman-y, it's not
totally.
It's not weird like the rest of the movie is.
Yes. Oh, get ready, everybody. So back in Smallville, he reconnects with Lana Lang, played by Annette O'Toole. Anybody that watched Smallville will know this as Martha Kent. In Smallville, Annette O'Toole is great. And I would say Lana is great. In this love triangle, I said this earlier, maybe, feel things out with Lana, man. Let's see where that goes.
Was this I don't remember, because I watched some other sequences on the internet as well. Was this, does Lana meet Lois in the full version, or is this, because like there's a great sequence where Lana actually does meet Lois Lane
in the very end of the movie.
Okay. All right, good. Yeah. Okay, great. I wasn't sure if that was like a deleted sequence or if that was later in the movie, but I love that sequence, but we'll talk about that later. But yes, Lana's great.
Yeah, that part I was like, oh, this should have been your movie, man.
This is the whole movie. You stay in Metropolis, and then you could tell like Paul Dini and company were like, and that's why we did it in an episode of the show. Like,
yeah. Have it where Lana comes to fuck all the Smallville shit. Have because then we get into like, what is it, Brad or something? I don't even have the guy's name.
I couldn't care less about that guy, but yes,
quarterback, the big quarterback who's now Lush, whatever.
Yep.
We keep cutting back to him because Richard Lester thinks it's hilarious. There was a whole era where it's like drunk people are so fucking funny. But have Lana come to Metropolis and then put Superman in a love triangle. Like that's the Clark Kent part of this movie is him dealing with this love triangle with Lana and Lois.
Well, because what's her name? Like Lois always has one over on Clark.
Yeah.
And like, you know, she really talks a big game, but tries to keep him at arm's length. Show Clark being willing to move on and show how that upsets Lois.
Yeah. And I also like Lana. I like where we position Lana's character because we do like she's a little bit of a motor mouth, you know, a little bit of and it's like, yeah, there's something there. She has a kid who I heard them say Ripley, which of course I should have known. There's no way in '83 the little kid's name is Ripley. It's Ricky. That's correct. A Smallville, they're not naming their small in '83. They're not naming their Smallville kid Ripley.
No, that'd be awesome, but no.
That'd be a cool kid, and that's not where it's Smallville, man.
Yeah, my cat's name's Ripley.
Yeah, it's a good name. It's just one of those like Smallville's supposed to evoke like the 50s or maybe even at this point like the 40s. Like, it's not gonna be Ripley. I don't know what I was thinking.
Yeah.
So the amount Gus put in his check was $78,000, and it turns out people did notice, specifically the accountant guy that works for Webster, our de facto Lex Luthor in this movie.
Yeah.
And this scene's funny because he's kind of like, it used to be before computers. If somebody wanted to rob you, they just came in with a gun. Now it's like, oh, who knows? Who knows where that money is? It's like, if only there was a machine whose sole purpose was to, let's say, I don't know, compute numbers.
Right.
Then it'd be easier to keep track of. But all we have are these computers, and who knows how they work.
Well, like you're using the computers to do that. What are you talking about?
It's like, yeah, exactly. That's the reason it's harder for them the reason it's hard to make a good heist movie in 2024 is computers keep it from you having the money lying around, dude. What are you talking about? What's going on?
Yeah, no, it's
the reason you noticed it is because you had a machine that was computing the number and it said this number is wrong. That's how you knew the number was wrong. What are you talking about?
That's just him being frustrated. He's like, I don't know how these computers work, man. It's just so stupid.
Just so dumb. Anyway, Gus immediately outs. They're like, this genius. Unless he does something really stupid and obvious, we're not going to know who it is. Cut to Gus Gorman pulling up in a hot rod, and it's like, all right.
I wonder if he had like a contract where he's like I famously Shannon Doherty got to keep every piece of clothing she wears in a movie. That was like part of her contract.
Yeah.
Richard Pryor's like, yeah, and if I drive a car in the movie, I own the car.
That's my car now. Maybe good for him. Yeah. Back in Smallville, Clark helps Lana's son in like a bowling tournament by literally sneezing the bowling pins into oblivion, like just blowing up the bowling pins with a sneeze that launches the bowling ball like a bullet. Like it killed like a stray dog behind the building. Like that's how hard the bowling ball rockets through this place.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I usually try to lump these together. Didn't this time. Webster wants Gus's help to destroy the Colombian coffee crop. We love these plots in these Superman movies for some reason.
Like, what are you doing? Like, it's like if it's not a real estate scheme, it's a scarcity scheme.
Yeah.
Like, did someone read an article about Nestle and they were like, "Oh."
Well, yeah, it's funny too because it's like early '80s. It's funny that we're just getting into this like money never sleeps, greed is good
Gordon
stuff.
Gekko kind of
shit. Yeah. Sal knows this. I'm not telling Sal anything he doesn't know, but in that Man of Steel reboot, they turned Lex Luthor into Donald Trump. And we're still dealing with that asshole. 50 years later, we're still fucking. In the 80s, they were like, Back to the Future 2. In the 80s, everybody was like, this guy sucks, right?
Right. Like, this guy is clearly evil.
Yeah.
And Biff Tannen in Back to the Future 2 he's deliberately designed to look like Donald Trump.
And 50 years later, we've elected that guy president twice. We voted for the back. Oh, anyway, whatever. Sorry, everybody. but it's interesting that we're clearly getting like the early rumblings of that here.
Yeah.
So they want him to reprogram a weather satellite, and to do that, he needs to go into a smaller computer. Again, the computer shit in this movie is nonsense.
Yes,
it's bullshit nonsense. Back in Smallville, Clark is going on a picnic with Lana. He has his little Smallville sweater hung over his shoulders, so the S for Smallville, it's clearly evoking his cape. It's cute.
It's cute.
And then by the way, the field they're going on their picnic in looks awful. The grass is like super tall. It looks very windy. It's like,
I would not go.
Spot.
This is horrible.
There's definitely critters in that grass. Like you don't want to be out there.
Yeah, you're going to get bit.
So man, so many disasters follow Clark. Ricky knocks himself out in front of like a plow. Superman saves him. So you know what, gang? I'm sorry. We got to get through a bunch of bullshit. I'm sorry because as I'm reading these things, like, oh, this is all kind of stupid. It doesn't really add up to anything. I'm sorry. I didn't make the movie, but I feel sorry for you.
Yeah, you have to like recount it because it's like it is tedious. Like we could just be like, we just want to get to the lady turning into a robot, but like you got to get through some shit to get there.
Dude, when I was pulling assets for this, the only thing people remember about this movie or care about is the lady turning the robot, because clearly that's what they want. They wanted somebody to turn into a robot and fight Superman, and we've wanted that for decades, and we still haven't gotten it. Just give us a person turning into a robot and fighting Superman.
That's all it takes, man. I don't know.
So anyway, Gus sneaks into, this is so stupid, Sal. He sneaks into, what is it, like a farming equipment store or whatever? Yeah. Okay. He sneaks in this place because it's a tiny computer, whatever. Right. This forces Gus to try and get like, what's his face, Brad, drunk.
Right.
And he gets drunk at the same time because bits. And then he hacks into it. And this sequence is pure Richard Lester, man, because he drunkenly trying to hack is apparently able to wreck our entire infrastructure to the point where instantaneously, like while this is going on, a person gets a letter in the mail that's a bill that his wife, I guess the implication is his wife is overspending, which leads him to casual spousal abuse, jokes in the 80s, harmless.
Hilarious. Yep.
And then the crosswalk signs. There's two crosswalk signs stacked on each other, and the walking person in one jumps to the other and starts fighting the other one. What are we doing?
I don't know. Right. Like it's a goofy, stupid comic book movie. Like we're just having some fun.
This guy, they should have Richard Lester directing Looney Tunes movies. Why is he doing Superman?
He's feeling the same way.
Yeah, for real. Eventually, he causes the weather satellite to wipe out Columbia's coffee crop. We cut to back to Webster, who celebrates this on his rooftop snow slope. And which
is pretty boss. Like,
that's what I was going to say. Double-edged sword, man. On one hand, this is stupid. On the other hand, it looks cool.
It does look cool. It reminded me, what's funny is we did get that inevitably here in New Jersey, at least, where we have the mall, like not the Mall of America. It used to be called Xanadu, and now it's called the American Dream. We have an indoor ski slope.
Nice. Yeah. It was one of those, like, this is cartoony and stupid.
Yeah.
But also,
I kind of love it.
I do kind of love it. Yeah. So, but what we find out is they're celebrating. It's by the way, our rogues gallery here is Webster, his sister. We bag on this lady really hard. I don't know. Like they treat this woman like she's a fucking battle axe, and she's not that bad. Like she might be a mean lady, but she's not that bad looking. I don't know.
No. There is a secret. I remember I was just like, I got to look back on this, and I didn't want to watch the whole movie again. So I went on YouTube and I looked up like a scene, and it's this ugly lady turns into robot in Superman 3.
It's like, guys, stop.
I was like, oh my god.
Yeah. Stop being so mean. And then we have Lorelai, who's like their, the mole, his lady, Webster's lady, who, Lorelai is a smoke show.
She is. Oh, I was taken aback. I'm like, oh, this chick's looking okay.
Yeah. And we have a running gag that's actually, I think, pretty effective. Like, of the running gags, I think it's one of the more effective ones. That her dumb airhead blonde thing is something she puts on.
Smart.
And she's actually really smart. And I'm like, this is a bit that works. This is a good one. Okay, so while they're celebrating the coffee crop, Gus shows back up and he's like, actually, Superman came in and just undid all that shit. And
right.
Because he's Superman. I don't know if you guys realize we're in a Superman movie.
Yeah.
So this is something you're going to have to contend with. And so, like so many people before them, Webster's like, well, the solution's simple. Then we got to fucking kill Superman.
Right.
Yeah.
Such a simple solution.
Such a simple thing. If, how come nobody's thought of it before?
Yeah, it's weird.
So Webster's girl, Lorelei, this is before I had her name in my notes. Lorelei reminds them of kryptonite. And he's like, that's right. Superman, like a fucking idiot, mentioned his one weakness in the one interview he did. Of course, kryptonite.
Yeah.
We're going to get to a bit, Sal, that I don't hate, which is, so I might not remember it correctly, but basically they task Gus with 3D printing. They're like, find in space. I guess we have just ships out there. Find in space, wherever in space kryptonite is. Mm-hmm. And then we're going to make it here.
Yes.
The one loophole is that there's parts of kryptonite they don't know what it is.
Yeah.
That our system, it's not on our periodic table. So they're like, I don't know what that is.
Yeah,
and so he prints an approximation of kryptonite. Correct me if I'm wrong. So this would be in modern stuff. If we're going back to the Smallville reference, what will happen with this kryptonite is essentially back in the day, kids at home, back in the day, specifically in the Silver Age, there was a piece of kryptonite, the rainbow of kryptonite. They all did different things. Growing up with Smallville, red kryptonite is what made you a dick. I believe, Sal, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe in the Silver Age, though, red kryptonite was like a wild card. It could turn you into an ant person. It could turn you, like, it make your head big. Like,
yeah, in fact, Mark Waid kind of brought that back in the main universe now. But like, yes, it's unpredictable.
Yeah, it's unpredictable. Was there in the Silver Age? Was there a makes you a dick kryptonite?
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, there was.
Okay.
I don't remember which color it was, but yes, there's one that makes you lose your powers. There's one that might make you gay. Like,
yes, because it's the 70s, guys.
No,
you're right. I think there was one that flipped your gender.
Yeah.
But yeah, because in at least in modern stuff, yellow kryptonite takes your powers away forever.
Right.
Black kryptonite, which I think was a Smallville original.
Yes. I remember black kryptonite.
Yeah, is what splits you into two people. And so we're kind of in the more modern lexicon, this synthetic kryptonite is doing double duty as what would be red kryptonite and black kryptonite. It's not, we don't credit the kryptonite for splitting them in two. This is just one of those Richard Lester's yada yada, like whatever. He's two people now. Fuck it. Who gives a shit? But anyway, this leads to a stupid scene where they're doing all of it's so dumb. Lana calls Clark and is like, uh-oh, my son said Superman's coming to his birthday. Can you make that happen for me? And Clark, because he's a chump, was like, yeah, I guess. And then the Smallville turns it into a parade. Yep. And then Gus shows up dressed like a general, and everybody's like, well, I guess this is happening.
Well, I guess he is one, and he acts like a lunatic clown. Like he just,
And he just hands
it to him, and he's like, "Oh, this looks like kryptonite, but I'll take it." Like, what are you doing?
That 100% that, man. All you needed to do is fucking read a fucking comic. Like, I know in the 80s this is a bigger ask for like professionals. Just read a fucking comic and make it a different color, man. Make it red. He 3D printed it. You could be like, "Hey, it came out wrong. It's red." And then that explains why Superman would just take it, because I'm Superman and I've had two movies fuck up my shit with this kryptonite. I'm not going to just take something that looks like kryptonite.
Yeah, I know. No, it's so stupid. It's so clearly kryptonite, or at least it looks just like it. It's got the crystals and everything. It's just
So he's just like, yeah, like, when somebody gives you socks or something, he's like, oh yeah,
oh cool, all right, thanks. Yeah. I didn't even really want to do any of this, so all right.
So. Yeah, he just takes that. So Superman goes back home with Lana.
Yeah.
And this is always the stuff that bothers me. The glasses Clark stuff doesn't bother me. What bothers me more is the more you lean into it, like, actually, Superman and I are friends. And actually, and the more time I spend with, then it's like, okay, you guys are stretching my willing suspension of disbelief a little bit, that nobody would pick up on what's going on here.
Yeah.
But anyway, he's back at Lana's, and she gets a phone call, I guess like a fucking oil tanker is like over a bridge or some shit. And they call Lana because Superman's there. And since Superman is like, actually, hey, you want to get down instead of that?
Right.
and eventually gets his bearings and he gets there, but it's too late. It's already crashed. And it's like, Superman, if only you'd been here a few minutes earlier.
Yeah. Like, okay, but what would you have done if I didn't exist?
Exactly.
Who would you have blamed for that?
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe invested in infrastructure. I don't know, man.
Yeah. All I know is it's like, I appreciate it. I am kind of all over the place, but I'm also clearly selective, because like I don't jump into every problem, but when I do, I deal with it in a selectively weird way.
Yeah. Yeah. So then I think we get into, or at least the way the movie treats it, we get into one of the most egregious things Superman, because Superman's not in his right mind. So
no,
yeah, he's not being himself. And some would say, like the newspapers would say, he's acting evil. And what evil act, what crime against humanity does Superman commit that turns the people against him? Well, of course, he takes the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and he straightens it.
I mean, that would screw up. I mean, as I recall, Italy refuses to fix it because it is a tourist destination.
Yeah.
But, right? You're like, oh no. I mean, he also opens up the tanker, but like,
well, but they're not yet though. That's my point. They've
already thrown him under the bus because
that's the thing that blows my mind. This looks like it's going to be the beginning of a montage of Superman being a dick, but what instead is he strains the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Then we see like all these newspapers are like, "Is Superman evil now?" And it's like, "What? Whoa, time out! Like, what the fuck?" And he does other things later, like he blows. And again, like it's so tame. He like blows out the Olympic torch. Like right when they're about ready to light it. It's
what a jerk. He's a prankster.
He is a prank. Dude, that would be funnier. Instead of evil Superman, he's just a little bit of a scamp. He's just like, I'm doing bits.
I mean, this is what would happen if like Mixia Spitlick just, impersonated him.
Yeah. That'd be good.
Like everyone's in their underwear,
I really want a Mr. Mrs. Spitlick movie. I want it. The episode of Superman the Animated Series, the Paul Dini written episode with Mixie, so good.
Yeah.
And it's good. Part of what makes that episode so good is it's one of the few times where you get to show how clever Superman is.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and you get to see Superman kind of frustrated.
Yeah.
Normally if he's frustrated, it's because he's like got a moral outrage, but in this case, he's just kind of like, I don't have the patience for this guy.
Yeah. Oh man. And so this culminates into Webster wants to use this. So this culminates in a scene where Lorelai is on top of the Statue of Liberty, which is in Metropolis in these movies.
Yep.
And because one assumes either Richard Lester or the Salkinds are obsessed with the idea that you need to know, it is important that you know Superman's dick works. Okay. This is vital. We need you to know he's not just some Boy Scout. All right.
Yeah. No.
And
he gets down.
He gets down. Okay. And so Lorelai, this is where Lorelai is basically like, hey, the scheme is, almost forgot about the scheme.
Yeah.
This genius scheme Webster comes up with. He wants to corner oil.
Mm-hmm.
And so he has Gus hack all of the oil tankers to have them go into one, like they get a message to go into one spot. But one guy's like, fuck that shit. I don't take orders from no computer. I'm going to Metropolis.
I'm analog, baby.
Yeah. And so Lorelai's like, hey, wish that guy would go back and like join those other tankers, and Superman's like, got it, and blows a hole in the tanker.
Yeah. 10 people die.
Yeah. Cause a huge oil spill that goes on for days.
Yeah, no, he destroys like massive ecosystems. It's horrible.
Yeah. And then he goes back and does what anybody would do and fucking boinks Lorelai.
Yeah, he does, which I'm like, you don't need to be evil.
No.
To convince me to do that.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know if she's, because remember there's like Superman Returns where like Parker Posey's like in love with him. Like you could tell like she's like, I just kind of like, my job is to distract him, but like I kind of also want to be with him. Like Miss Tessmacher before her. Like there's every like femme fatale, so to speak, in the Superman franchise are like, I work for the old gross moron.
Yeah.
But when I meet Superman,
I'm down to clown.
I'm down to clown.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe just yeah. I don't. Yeah,
He just bangs the goodness into her. Like,
well, and also here's the other weird thing about this and Superman 2 is that Superman. He does have a Lois Lane doesn't have a recollection of Superman 2. Superman doesn't have a recollection of this in Superman 3. And it's like, that's weird, guys. It's weird that you keep doing this.
Yeah, I don't like it.
Yeah. So then this, by the way, so basically have evil Superman running around. This is gonna build to Lana decides I guess because she's not watching the news, decides to go to Metropolis, even though Superman's acting like a real asshole.
Yeah.
And then Ricky, he's at a bar, Superman, like evil Superman's or Dick Superman. That's how I have him in my notes.
Dick Superman, yes.
Is at a bar just being a dick. And Ricky's like, no, Superman, no.
So weird. You know what it reminds me of, actually? I mean, like, obviously, I mean, I think, and this is Superman 3. Are they Spider-Man 3 a throwback to this?
This is what I was going to ask you, because we talked about when we were watching these movies, like, wait a second, Spider-Man 1 and 2 is just Superman 1 and 2. Hold on. Yeah. And then you get to this, I'm like, wait, Spider-Man 3, 2? Where's Spider-Man 4, A Quest for Peace?
Where it really sucks and he has to fight the Sentry or something.
That actually, on paper, the idea of Spider-Man being forced to fight the Sentry, it's like, I don't know.
Oh, no, I want
Spider-Man wins that one. I don't know how he wins that one.
That's the Captain Universe movie. I think it's important to point out that when Superman is a dick, his suit looks exactly like Brandon Routh's suit. That it's
good point,
it's one the same color scheme.
Yeah.
As the Brandon Routh suit. Like, if you were to compare them, his cape color, his boot color, his trunk color, and his like bodysuit color, they're all the same color as the Brandon Routh suit. They were like, oh yeah, that. And I'm like, that's what he looks like when he's evil.
Yeah, I do. And also I like the idea that when he's evil, his suit gets the memo and becomes darker.
It's like, just like if Spider-Man were evil, his suit would be darker too.
God, it is the same. So yeah, this Ricky yelling out to Superman, like, hey, remember who you are, somehow causes him to split into two people.
This is the Reeve influence, right? Reeve's like, I want to do this. I want to do a thing where I'm evil and I want to fight myself. Right? Like, is that what this is? Is this Chris Reeve's fault?
Oh, wait. Are you back?
Oh, sorry. Yep.
Okay, all right. Sorry, we froze up for a second. Sorry, everybody.
Yeah. Is this Chris Reeve's fault? Can we blame this on him? Like, does he want to go, I want to be evil and I want to fight myself? Weird.
Yeah, it is. It's a weird. Maybe I do think this would work better if there was even a hint of conflict between Clark and Superman. Like, if this movie was kind of about, and the Spider-Man movies were really good about this. Actually, if Spider-Man 3 had leaned into this aspect more, it might have been a winner. But this idea of like the conflict between who Clark is and who Superman is, and that expectation, this fight might have meant something. Yeah. Where it doesn't in this. It's just
it is weird. Like, it's weirdly intense, I might say. Like, this fight, I mean, and it should be. If you're gonna fight yourself, it's gonna be the most intimate, personal fight. Like, it's gonna be dirty, it's gonna be hard.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know, I didn't want to be there for it. I was like, this is weird.
Yeah, this is weird. And you could have done something if he goes back to Smallville and he starts to wrestle with, like, maybe
who he used to be. Not to pretend it, like, I was the quarterback in. Well, actually, he wasn't in this movie. In the comics, he was. Like, he was straight up a quarterback and stuff. But I wonder, like, if it's like, you went too far in the other direction. Like, you don't even know who you are anymore. You're just and you're always pretending to be someone else. I mean, again, like, this is just Spider-Man like 2 and 3.
Yeah, I know. And it could be like, and maybe like people people don't respect him. They think he's a goody two shoes, that sort of thing. So it's like, should I like be or like maybe this would work better if it was Lex Luthor again. Because I keep stopping this Lex Luthor guy and he keeps popping back up. Maybe I should be a little tougher on this dude.
You can actually get away with not having Lex Luthor be in here, where he's like, it's a matter of time before Lex Luthor gets out of jail again. Like, like you're like, you have a legacy of failure.
Yeah.
Your only kin are dead.
Yeah. And
you
it could be like
them.
maybe I'm being too nice. Maybe I should be like a little tougher, and that leads to this fight. But whatever. It's just a Superman Clark fight. If you're worried about Clark, don't be. He also has the Superman powers.
He gets them. I like him emerging. I like the idea that he doesn't have the power, or at least like he's weaker than Superman. He like forgets who he is, and I kind of like that because that's also, there's some kind of like an element there where there's some depth. He's like, Clark isn't Superman. Clark is someone else. And it's like I like the idea that like eventually, he puts him in the conveyor belt and puts him in the machine and everything, and then he's seemingly dead. A few times he dies, but where he blasts.
That's the main thing is we try to crush Clark. That's what's going on. Yeah.
Which is fine. It's like tamping down your insecurities. But I like the idea of him blasting out like Clark realizes he's Superman.
You're like, oh wait a second, bitch, I'm Superman. Hold on,
I'm both actually, and it's like that's. I mean, that is straight up the motif of Spider-Man 2.
Yep.
Is you aren't one or the other, you are both.
Yep.
They say it. The movie is literally about that. He says, if you do this, it'll make you sick.
Yeah.
Admit who you are and you'll be fine. He does. He's Spider-Man now.
Yeah. Yep. Spider-Man 2 is a good movie. That's a good movie.
Yeah.
And the other thing is like especially at this point, you start to see a version of the movie of like, okay, I wouldn't cast Richard Pryor for this. But you have a guy that's like, let's say Milton Fine. I don't know if Brainiac had already been in the comics at this point. I don't know if the Milton Fine version had. I don't remember when he pops in.
83, no. But no.
Well, so that kind of throws this off. But you have this guy that like is down and out, and then he gets contacted or possessed by or whatever some alien entity that makes him incredible with computers. And so as this person is transforming into Brainiac, he comes up with situations that like, oh, let's do this. And then instead of you actually made a really good better argument than this movie does for the scene between Clark versus Superman.
Yeah.
But of course, what I want is just make it Bizarro. Just have it as the fight goes on. That's maybe the thing. As the fight goes on, the Clark version realizes like, wait, I am Superman.
Yes.
And as he becomes more Superman, the evil Superman becomes more inhuman, becomes more monstrous.
Yeah, becomes more monstrous and stuff like that. And then you can get like a stunt cast in there. You could have like Lou Ferrigno or Sylvester Stallone, somebody like big and scary. Like and it's funny too because that's always I've always wanted to. I always thought that would be an interesting take on. I'm not a huge fan of the reverse speak bizarre. You know what I mean? That stuff. Yeah, no, it's annoying and it's hard to keep track.
Yeah,
Seinfeld did it best, where they were just like, hello is goodbye, goodbye is hello. Shouldn't it be bad bye?
Yeah.
Goodbye is still goodbye.
Yeah.
Does he live underwater?
Yeah.
What?
Yep.
Is he black?
And so like but I think what would be an interesting thing is and I think we forget this with Superman, what makes Spider-Man antagonists so great, and I think what makes Batman antagonists so great is that they are reflections of the hero, and they speak to, I think Batman antagonists reflect the darker aspects of Batman, of what he represents. Spider-Man is more his insecurities, more of the stuff, like a lot of them are his mentors, a lot of them are father figures, a lot of them are women he's in love with, you know what I mean, like stuff that are speak to his insecurities. And we haven't really dialed that in with Superman, which I think we should. And specifically, I think Bizarro would be a good one of, if I were Superman, one of my insecurities is because I'm so much more powerful than everybody else that I would, and I'm an alien. I know I'm an alien. My biggest fear would be a more alien, more monstrous version of me, that this is how people view me.
Right.
And that's what Bizarro represents to him. Like Bizarro represents that those internal doubts of how he views himself. Like maybe this is what I am in the world. I'm a human homunculus or whatever.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the problem is I don't want to watch another effing superhero movie where they don't want to be the hero, or where they're like, I especially don't want to see a Superman movie where he's like, oh no, did you know I'm all alone in the world? And I'm like, oh my God, do I not care about that? You grew up here, man. You lived in effing Kansas. You had multiple girlfriends. Like you are de facto a member of this race.
Yeah.
Like you're fine. But I do like the idea of, like, at least in Superman 3 in 1983, playing with that concept where he's like, oh no, do I belong here? Am I a monster? He has the insecurities. Obviously the world's like, yay, but then he's a dick and people immediately turn on him, and that makes him more upset and self-reflective and more like, oh, I was right. See, I did I moved the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Now they hate me.
Yeah.
I barely gave them an excuse, and now they want my blood. Like that's something.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I think we should do that more. Like you could do that with, like, Parasite represents kind of the dark side of Superman has all this power. What happens when that power corrupts you and you just want more and more power? That's what Parasite.
At the very least, I want to see Metallo.
Yeah, dude. Well, and again, and I think that's part of the, whether it might be like lizard brain stuff or whether people are specifically like jonesing for Metallo. It's like, yeah, I want Superman to fight a robot, man. That's part of funny. One of the most iconic early Superman things is the Fleischer cartoons where he fights a giant robot. Have him fight a giant Sky Captain in the World of Tomorrow robot.
Yes. Honestly, I mean, like, it's 83. Yeah. Terminator's 84.
Yeah.
If this movie was 85, they would have been like, oh, we can do that.
Yep.
Like, we could do Metallo.
We could do Metallo.
Like, we could do the stop motion, and like it would have had that great Uncanny Valley stop motion for a robot. Like, it would have been really scary. Like Superman versus a Terminator with like a kryptonite heart.
Yeah. Yep.
Especially if they're played by somebody cool, like Malcolm McDowell.
Yeah.
And then his flesh melts off.
Yeah.
And now he's like, he's just like, yeah, that'd be cool.
That'd be cool. But I just realized, wasn't Superman, because you mentioned he had multiple girlfriends, wasn't Superman's mermaid girlfriend also named Lorelei?
She was Lemuria, I believe, or something like that. But they all have L's. They're all LLs.
All LLs. All right. Because I was just wondering if maybe this Lorelei, they have to be an accident. I don't think anybody knows.
They didn't read the books. There's no way it's on purpose. The fact that Lana Lang is in this is amazing. Like, honestly, because I can imagine them saying like, "Hey, we want to have like Clark's old girlfriend from his childhood show up. Great, I'll name her after my ex-girlfriend from high school."
Yep.
Does she have one, or does he have one from the comics? I wouldn't know.
Yeah, there's no way to know. There's no.
There we go, Lori Lamar.
Okay, all right. Yeah. I was too much to expect that maybe they were pulling a deep cut.
Yeah.
So
nope.
This Superman recombines. He becomes himself again. He's Superman. He reverses. And when I say he reverses the oil spill he caused, I mean literally the footage reverses. No harm, no foul. There's no salt water in that oil. No sea creatures were harmed. He just rewinds it.
He'll do that again in the next movie.
Yeah. Cool. Very cool. I don't think I've seen a frame of Superman 4, so that'll be exciting for me.
That's I won the most.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but cool. Yeah.
So he goes back to find Lorelei, I guess, but Webster lures him into a trap. It's in like a Grand Canyon or something. It's one of those places. The Webster's balloon down, like they've got these like balloon bicycle things. They balloon down, and Gus is like, "Sorry, I'm going to take this donkey." And he looks down at what is a sheer cliff face.
Yep.
But we're supposed to understand he's going to take a donkey down because of this line.
Because they do that, at the Grand Canyon.
Yeah, I just don't believe a man can fly. Har. So inside, why is it here? Doesn't matter. Inside this canyon, they built a giant supercomputer that can do everything. Sal, this computer can do everything a computer can, but also get this, some things they can't.
Thanks to the
Isn't that wild? Isn't that wild?
Wow. Yeah.
What does that mean?
That is
we'll find out. It can turn into
people
into robots.
Lame. I hate that so much. That's such a like hand wavy FU like script note.
It's hard, man. Because we live here in the future, right? And it's hard not to think about what could have been. And this is 2001 was in the 70s, right? 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Oh yes,
because they were already quoting that in Superman 1.
Yeah.
Could you imagine a Dick Donner Superman 3 that he's like, I'm going to do Brainiac and I'm going to use as a visual reference.
Yeah.
2001: A Space Odyssey.
Oh.
I almost want to cry thinking about that. That could be so like if you had like a scene like the obelisk scene, but it's the idea of Brainiac got to Earth that much earlier than Superman.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yes, I love that so much. And it's like because the thing is, you could do that now, and you could do it better, and you could do it more narratively satisfying and all this stuff. And it could look realer. But like I want that uncanny valley. I want the old 80s, like I want that like fearless, kind of like obstinate, we're gonna do this, damn it. Like I want that like creepy artsy shot of like this thing. Like we were just doing this book, Ultimate Origin, where the Ultimate Watcher is a bunch of obelisks that just appear during significant events, and they're just like they look like these old totems with eyes in them.
Yeah.
And they just you're just typing away, and then like if you're Peter Parker in the Ultimate Universe, you're like doing your homework or masturbating, and you like look over and there's this fucking obelisk, and you're like, ah, like, and then it just goes away eventually, or it doesn't. I don't remember if they ever leave, but like they weren't there before, and now it's here.
Yeah.
And the idea that like, maybe in Kansas, there's like this thing, like, you know what I mean? Like you show like Kansas, 25 years ago or 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And, it's like, it has a farm. It's a sold on it because it's like, oh, that's when the Kents get the farm.
Yeah.
And then like there's an obelisk. There's a cornfield and then obelisk.
Yeah.
And then like you flash forward and it's like that's where the ship lands. Like a lot of cool things in there.
You could do so, and especially if you lean. That's something because obviously in the first Superman they kind of lean into the god mythology stuff. It's like Brainiac could benefit from that. Like if you say like if you position Brainiac as the anti Jor-El, that shit could have been real cool.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, they could have explored the whole like the adversary. Like because the idea that like Jesus gets tempted in the wilderness.
Yeah.
Like the devil is just an adversary. He just asks questions. Which I like that idea that he's there and he's like, so you're the savior, but you didn't save the world we came from.
Yeah, and you know what? Something is you could do stuff with that now, and you have to be. This could be tricky because you don't want to get into scold territory,
right?
But with now this idea of like Brainiac. If you did a Brainiac movie now where he uses social media to kind of turn people against Superman, and this idea that we're so beholden to things, objects, products, that we forget our human connection, which is tough because inherently, especially now, if you're making a super movie, you're making a product. You're selling people a product.
It already is one, yeah.
Yeah. So
they're all. You're making a Charlie Brown Christmas special that you're complaining that is about the commercialization of Christmas.
Yeah.
And it's also sponsored by GE,
Yeah. Well, and again, even more modern example, Barbie is essentially juggles deals with the same dueling impulse. And I think it does a pretty good job juggling, but it's one of those.
Yeah, but don't forget,
it just exists in it.
It exists. And at least they're asking, which I appreciate.
Yeah. So anyway, that's not the movie we get. We get the Websters in a underground computer thing. And the Superman shows up. This is where we get Webster files a bunch of missiles at Superman and plays a literal video game.
Yep. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Which was it like? I don't know if it was like, because I remember there was a Superman Atari video game. I didn't look it up whether it was.
It might as well be. I thought the same exact thing. I'm like, I bet you could buy this video game in the store shelves in 1983.
Yeah. I don't think so, because that would require a level of coordination that I know didn't exist back then. And I wonder, it's like I can imagine the people who made the game going, we would have given you the assets for the game. Like, why didn't you just use the game?
Call us. Oh, you didn't know we were making a game? Well, who?
Well, damn it! Well, exactly.
So anyway, Superman shows up. He dodges the missiles. He shows up, and Lorelai's like, "Hi, honey," and he's like, "Bitch, I don't know who you are." And she's like, "Wait." He's like, "That was a different person." I'm like, "Why are you guys making it weird?
Yeah,
why are you making it weird, man? Why you got to make it weird?"
Right?
Superman can be, it's weird. It's the same thing of like, I've talked on the show that I like She-Hulk quite a bit. One of the gags I don't like, and it's in the first episode where they're like, she's questioning Cap's virginity, and it's like, why are we obsessed with this shit, man?
I don't know.
Who cares about Superman or Cap's sex life? Fucking calm down.
Yeah. Right? And then they had to answer it too. Like, I like the idea of like, okay, yes, people are wondering about that. Like, people would wonder.
Yeah.
But also, what?
Yeah, like, and by the way, of course, dude, Cap and Black Widow were banging in between Infinity War and Endgame. Come on, man.
They had to be.
At least once.
At least once. There's no way.
There's no way. They saw the world end together. They did the flirty stuff in Winter Soldier. Come on, man.
And there's nobody in the, everyone's dead. It's okay.
Yeah.
You're not, come on.
Anyway, but, anyway, whatever. So evil Superman was a different version of the character, I guess. So the machine, we're to understand, Gus helped them make a machine that can anticipate the weaknesses of anybody. even though they already know the weakness of Superman.
They literally exploited it. Yeah.
Yeah. And they make a kryptonite ray. And Russell is like, good job, Gus. You're the man that killed Superman. Right. And this is Richard Pryor's like, wait, I don't know if that's what I want to be known for. Even though I was okay with it earlier.
Yeah, this is one of those things that's also like a trend that you'll see in movies like these, where I like to call it occasionally the Rick Moranis effect, where they're like, we cast a nerdy bad guy whose actor is more charismatic than the character they are portraying.
Yeah.
Is there anything we can do after the script is already written to salvage them? Like, or at least show that they feel bad. And this is where you'll see like nerdy characters like these, like, apologize a lot.
Yeah.
Like something where they're clearly like they're either partially willing or unwilling, or they're co-opted by their insecurities or their nerdiness, and the hero still arrests them, but you get the impression that maybe like things will go okay for them. Like the one that I noticed it the most in, honestly, is Batman Forever, where they were like, we are going to kill every single one of these MFers unless it's Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
The only one we will spare.
Yeah, we're going to keep him around for
no reason, because he's not going to be in anything.
Yeah, we're not going to utilize him again because, let's be honest, at this point, we're not going to be able to afford him. We're not going to be able to afford him. No, but and here's the thing. When you talk about that, you mentioned Rick Moranis, because I try to think of like, who would be better in this role than Richard Pryor for what we're trying to do. Rick Moranis, I don't know where he was at in his career at this point.
He was already relatively unknown during Ghostbusters, which is 84. So I think I think Strange Brew was a movie in this year.
Okay, so it's still, because
he is a big deal, but he's getting there. He's not a household name, but he does have a career. They could have gotten him, but he also was too busy.
Yeah, when also we've got Richard Pryor in this specifically because he is a name. So because there was a version of this movie. This is one of those movies where I'm watching it and I'm trying to come up with a better version in my head.
Yes.
And the version in my head that is Brainiac, I'm like, Jeff Goldblum, man. It's like Goldblum was working, but this is pre The Fly.
Yeah, it's like Earth Girl Zarizi era. Like
but it's just one of those like, oh man, The Fly era Jeff Goldblum playing a nerdy science guy being forced to turn into Brainiac and like a body horror.
I would love it.
That's a winner. That's a winner.
He would have done it. Like that would have been a thing. Yeah.
Ooh, absolutely. Fly's a good movie, everybody. So Gus has a change of heart because of course he does. He's our main character. And so he tries to help Superman escape this ray. He basically bashes because there's an emergency axe, and he uses that to like bash the ray out of the sky. Yep. And then Superman yeets right out of there. He's like, I'm out of here, bitches. And everybody's like, hold on, this computer. I think what we're supposed to understand is the computer's taking on a life of its own.
Yes.
Again, just do Brainiac. And they're trying to figure out a way.
I can't believe they didn't just do Brainiac. I mean, like, Brainiac did exist.
Yeah, and it would have been lame. I mean, let's be honest, Al. What it would have been is we would have called this movie Brainiac. We probably would have given him a voice, and that would be it.
Yeah.
But that would also not.
But at least it would have been something instead of just
something.
This thing you invented from whole cloth that is also a little like the thing you didn't do.
Yeah. Gus turns it off briefly by, I guess, releasing a screw.
Yeah.
And Webster getting this like Three Stooges slap fight over it.
Yeah.
This is where they're trying to escape the computer, and it grabs Webster's sister and turns her into a cyborg lady.
Yep.
So again, body horror is on the menu. Body horror.
They're happy to do
on
it.
The menu. Yeah. Whatever. She starts. This should have been happened earlier in the movie, and it should have been a different character. But she starts blasting people with rays. Superman
in the crotch for some reason. They're just like, oh, it's like they're using a Spaceball laser.
So Superman shows back up with the one of the acid canisters from earlier in the movie, and I guess the inside of the computer is getting very hot. So as it's like grabbing Superman and starting to try and take him over, it boils over and like just sprays. Like doesn't become gas. It just like sprays on the side of the machine. And that's enough to eat through it and kill it. And Superman has a line, I guess you could say, It died of acid indigestion.
That was rough. I
Yep.
was like so mad. First of all, like it's acid reflux. Like, don't call it acid indigestion. And also, I guess it's because it's like, well, they made 2 Bond movies this year. We got to get a little zinger in there.
He's got one-liners, man. And if everybody was worried, don't worry. Okay, everything's fine. Lady Webster wakes back up totally normal again. And earlier I kind of glossed over it, but during the whole gas thing, there was basically like they're kind of like reminding people of gas shortages of the 70s, huge gas shortages, people are fighting and everything. Don't worry, everybody's able to get as much gas as they want now.
Oh, good.
Yeah, no problems there.
Yeah, the issue wasn't greenhouse gases, the issue was lack of gases.
Yeah, they just
in my car.
Yeah, so fortunately everybody's able to get his gas, just drive as much as they want, willy-nilly, no consequences.
Please do. Yeah.
Superman flies Gus to a construction site where he crushes a piece of coal into a diamond.
Yeah,
I love it when Superman does this. And at first I thought he was going to give it to Gus to like help with the problem, and I'm like, well, listen, man, Gus, I get it, he saved you at the end, but he's
still a piece of shit. Like
he was your problem most of the movie, man. Like, fucking pull it.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of shocked that he didn't let him go, or that he did let him go. I really expected him to be like, like, oh, well, I guess I'll walk from here, Superman. He's like, yeah, you're going to jail.
You're going to jail. I
appreciate that he doesn't, because like,
I was gonna say there's merit. I agree with you because of what Gus does. It's like, Gus, going to jail, but he's the one black guy in these movies, so maybe hey.
Thank you. Yeah, he's like the only one.
Yeah, so the only one. So, and maybe that was where Richard Pryor's pull came in. Like, my character's not going to jail, by the way. That's not how this movie's going to end. Yeah. It ends with him at this construction site, and Superman's like, hey, do you have a computer? And they're like, a tiny one. It's like, perfect. Hire Gus Gorman.
Right. He's like, he was going to leave. He wasn't going to stay there. What are you talking about?
I like that bit where they're like, hey, so Superman's your reference. You want a job? And he's like, no, man, I'm good.
Yeah.
And he hoofs it to the nearest bus stop. And that's the end of Gus Gorman.
Great.
Clark shows up at Lana's. I missed the scene where she talked about how she had to pawn her ring. That's who the diamond's for, is for Lana.
Yeah.
And this sets up, she's now Perry White's secretary. And so when Lois shows back up, she's like, oh, look at this diamond Clark got me. And that's the bit you're talking about, where it's like, this scene should have been more of the movie because it's cute. And it's like that love triangle. Like, I immediately flash back to like covers from the 70s, like Superman, Lana and Lois. It's like, this is a thing, guys. This is a thing you could have done.
I love the how Lana introduced herself to Lois, where she like puts her hand way up here, just shoves the ring in her face. Yeah, it's like, oh, hi, good to meet you. Like, I was like, nice.
Well, the thing that they nail, for as much as this movie gets wrong, the thing that they nail, and of course they squander, but the thing that they nail is Lana and Lois are such different energies.
Yes.
But especially when they get in the room together, it's why you and I are both like, well, this is your movie. Like, why didn't you do this dynamic? Is something. It's something.
It's so much more fun to look at than whatever the hell I just watched.
This is what? This is fucking Three's Company or whatever. Like, this is, you know what I mean? Like, you got something here.
I agree.
Oh yeah, while he gives the ring, Brad shows back up at her hotel room just so Superman. This is the other thing we love. We need you to know Superman's dick works, and also we need to see him clown a bully.
Yes,
like we're so insecure about Superman's masculinity that he needs to show up some asshole. Like, come on,
right? I mean, like, on one hand, I think it's silly, but I also like Superman's a tough character to get mass appeal for some reason.
Yeah.
Like, people don't like Superman, and it's hard to sell him. And it's like, if you make him, I mean, like, look at what happens when you make him an alpha male.
Yeah.
You get people like who don't know who Superman is in any way, shape, or form, arguing against every accurate version of Superman, being like, this isn't Superman. And being like, no, man, what you wanted was an excuse to act like a dipshit and the world's most iconic visual, like, to tattoo on your body. Like, you don't care about like this character. You like misinterpretation. You're a Homelander fan. You are not a Superman fan.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I think we might get into this more as we go on, is how specifically when you get to the movies you're talking about, how Superman how does Superman, I guess we'll find out with the new James Gunn one.
Yeah.
But how does Superman exist in the Manosphere era?
Right?
Because that exists in such a male grievance and kind of like insecurity, like a deep insecurity that isn't part of what I think Superman's appeal is. And I think we should lean into this more.
Yeah.
How secure he is as who he is. Like, I'm this guy. Like, I'm not like, because you want conflict in your movies, and I think it's important to play on the again, especially when it comes to his antagonists, things about Superman, things that he would worry about, because I can tell you as a bigger guy.
Yeah.
It's easier for me to break things than it is for other people. You know what I mean? Because I'm just a bigger dude. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's easier for me to be more intimidating and stuff like that. So I would imagine with Superman, when you could crush somebody's hand, that stuff's on your mind. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think that stuff's important. But the idea of like, I think there is merit in having a take on the character that is like, I'm not worried about you. It, like, doesn't need to clown the bully. Why?
No,
I'm Superman.
Yeah, exactly. Superman doesn't need to clown the bully because I'm the best. I don't need to feel secure. I am secure.
Yeah.
He would feel like all of these like, massive like men first kind of situation. He would like Superman would pity them.
Yeah.
At best, and like if they had a massive platform, he would like decry them at worst. Like he would be like, "Hey, that's really inappropriate of you to like take your platform and do this."
Yeah.
But like there would be this undercurrent of like sadness that he would feel for them, where he's like, "I'm sorry that you feel like that," because I know how people feel all the time, and I know how I feel without having to try.
Yeah.
So like I know you're gonna feel sad, like or insecure, but like this isn't the way to go about it.
Yeah. I think there's something interesting there that would be worth exploring. But yeah, this movie ends with you have to end. Actually, I was trying to make a joke. All these movies end kind of lame. Like normally, like Superman, like going "hey" to some like the president or like a prison warden, and this one's not that different. Where he leans the leaning tower, and I love that there's no concern about the foundation.
I know.
Underneath it, he just pushes it one way and then he pushes it another.
Yep.
For this one Italian guy who likes to sell Leaning Tower merch.
Yeah, and he's like
frustrated about and be mad at Superman for ruining his business or whatever.
Yeah. He represents the other guy. Like, it's like this guy's endorsement means everybody's on board.
Yeah. So, and that's how Superman 3 ends. I did want to take a second because it didn't come up to Sal and I talked about alternate versions of this movie, what we could have done. Here's a little bit behind the scenes of what we could have gotten. In December 1980, producer Ilya Salkind wrote a treatment for this film that included Brainiac, Mr. Mxyzptlk, and Supergirl. The treatment was released online in 2007. The Mixie portrayed in the outline varies from the comic counterpart as he uses his ability to cause chaos.
Sure.
That sounds
okay.
like the normal
sounds
mix.
Like him, yeah.
Whatever. Dudley Moore was the first choice to play the role.
That's a great idea.
In the treatment, Brainiac was from Kalu and had discovered Supergirl in the same way that Superman was found by the Kents. Brainiac was portrayed as a surrogate father to Supergirl and eventually fell in love with his quote daughter, who did not reciprocate his feelings as she had fallen in love with Superman. Brainiac retaliates by using a personality machine to corrupt and manipulate Superman. The climax of the film would have seen Superman, Supergirl, Jimmy Olsen, Lana Lang, and Brainiac time travel to the Middle Ages for a final battle against Brainiac. After defeating him and leaving Brainiac behind, Superman and Supergirl would have married at the end of Superman 3.
What?
Or in Superman 4, the treatment was rejected for being too complex and expensive to shoot. And this is, I want to re-reference when people are just guessing it, like clearly, like we all have this friend, Sal, I know you do too. We all know some people that are like, oh, it would be great, right? And they just throw out a bunch of stuff.
The worst idea. all the ideas.
All the ideas. And it's one of those, like, as somebody that's been out in LA, quote unquote, working in this industry, whatever that means for the trajectory of my career.
Yes.
It's like there's a craft to writing. You know what I mean? There's a craft.
Well, it has to be about something. It can't just be all the references and all of the it can't just be a straight up adaptation because like what's the point? And it has to be like, it's because at the end of the day it's about telling a story. The film industry is about like telling a story. What is the story? And it's like, well, Lobo's gonna show up, and it's like, that's not a story. That's a reference.
So there's a craft to it. There's point of reference. Terminator 3 on the shelves right now. Sal has the backup in that. As Sal knows, there's a craft to this, and
you can't just have references, especially if it's like a license thing. Like, for example, if you want to use that reference, like, Terminator issue 3 is on shelves now, but they licensed it, but they didn't license the Terminator franchise. They licensed one of the Terminator movies. Thankfully, it was the first one, so it has most of it. But it can't just be. I can't put T-1000s and Rise of the Machines and like all these other, like, I can't put it all in there. And
so it's one of those, you realize reading this, it's like, oh, a lot of these producers are that one friend, and because they're the money people, they just get to circumvent and run it and just be like this and this and this and this and this.
Yeah.
Isn't that a movie? No, man. No, it's not. That's just a pile of ideas.
Have you ever read Kevin Smith's Superman movie?
No.
That should be an episode.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I R.I.P. John Schnepp, friend of the show. I have his Whatever Happened to the Death of Superman, which of course references that. Yeah, we should talk about that.
Right? But his movie is just a bunch of reference. Like, it is what a comic book fan would have thought was awesome.
Yeah.
And would it have been awesome in 97 to see like Batman and Hawkman and like a lot of references in the funeral procession of Green Lanterns and stuff? Like, yeah, that would have been pretty awesome. Was the movie about anything? And it's like, kinda.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been a good example of like, oh yeah, well, let's not go full nerd with it. And it's like, well, I get it.
The counterpoint is we talk about stuff that's out there now, and I'm kind of wrestling with. Sal, did you watch the first 2 episodes of Creature Commandos?
Yes.
Okay. So as a fan of Frankenstein, the monster from the comics, the Grant Morrison take that has gone on, I kind of what they did with the character, but because he's kind of
just
granted, there's still he's definitely like a incel version of the character. And it kind of, granted, there's more show left, so who knows where we take it.
Right.
They ruined it in the sense of like, I don't know how you redeem this guy.
It's hard, and I think they know that. Like, I think that's what this is about.
Well, that said, I'm willing to give it a little bit of leash because it is a take. It is a story. It's not just. It's like I'm trying to tell the story about the bride, and I'm using this. It's not like I don't like it because it kind of ruins a character I like, but it's not I understand where the read comes from. You know what I mean? Like, I understand the storytelling purpose we're doing here. So I'm willing to give it some leash because it's like, well, let's see where it goes. Because it's not like this movie where it's just like, whatever, fuck this shit. Here's this thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and also, I mean, like, the thing about the Frankenstein thing is, it's David Harbour. There's a larger universe. If everything goes well, there's plenty of opportunity for him to come back and be the version you want.
Well, and also to that point is we have a long history, specifically in the James Gunn one, of walking things back. Hey, Peacemaker's willing to kill as many men, women, and children as he has to for peace. Then comes the Peacemaker showing like, well, time out on the kid thing.
Yeah.
Weasel ate 27 kids. Come Creature Commandos, like, we heard he ate 27 kids. It's like, okay, so we'll see. And again, maybe even this one. But my point is that, like, if you're trying to tell a story here, and so sometimes you got to, it's and there's an arc there and stuff like that. And so this is just, I think, a good example of how these producers are just that one friend that, like, and because they're the money guy, they get to decide what's in your movie, what's not in your movie.
Yeah.
Before we go,
I don't know if this is, like, I don't know. Well, but not,
before we go, if on the super chat, One Shot 2003 says, favorite superhero Christmas episode or special. Sal, you got one?
I mean, in terms of shows and movies and stuff, I don't love Christmas with the Joker as much as everybody else does.
Mm-hmm.
And I do enjoy parts of the Justice League cartoon episode.
Yeah, I think that would be my go-to one.
Right? It's good,
Yeah.
but like I feel like there's a better example. I don't know what it is, but I don't love them. Like I don't have like a favorite. Oh, yes, I do. It's The Tick versus Multiple Santa.
Hilarious. I cannot pull the Tick as easily, but just the name of it and my memories of the Tick cartoon, I'm like, yeah, that would be great. That sounds great.
There's a bank robber. He's dressed like Santa, or rather, he's a bank robber. He dresses as Santa to escape being caught.
Yeah.
It doesn't fool them. He ends up accidentally falling through the chase onto a electric neon sign and electrocutes himself.
Yeah.
But instead of dying, and it's a W, but he lands at it upside down, so there's an M like burned into his chest. So it's like he's actually like a character, and he's voiced by Jim Cummings, like everybody else is.
Yeah.
And he, when he charges up static electricity, he can make a multiple of himself.
Great.
And so,
awesome.
So he's like, well, I'll just do a crime spree of like with myself, and Tick can't punch him because it's Santa.
I love it, dude.
Like that's the show.
Did you ever watch the live action Amazon Tick show?
I watched a little bit of it. I didn't like how serious it was.
Yeah.
And I really didn't like the actor they got. Like I know it's Pete from Shaun of the Dead. He's also an actor.
Yeah.
Who's in a lot of things. I think he plays Victor Frankenstein in the Creature Commando show.
Oh shit, you might be right. Yeah, I didn't think about that. Yeah.
I know he's in it. I don't remember which one he plays, but I think it's that. He's great and I love him, but not as the Tick.
Yeah, it wasn't for you. I liked it. Although I will say I watched all the first season, loved it. I didn't finish the second season, so maybe that's why I didn't get picked up. Anyway, Handsome Ransom says, in a perfect world, I'm saying I'm a machine who dreamt he was a man and loved it, but now the dream is over and the machine is awake. It's a reference to something that
It's got to be song lyrics. I don't know.
Yeah. It goes on. Would you rather Bruce Wayne or Tony Stark as your secret Santa?
Tony Stark.
Tony Stark. Yeah, he's fun. He's more fun.
Because basically what you're asking me is, do I want Tony Stark or Alfred as my secret Santa? Because there's no way that Bruce is thinking about this or doing anything.
And at best scenario, you're gonna unwrap it in some sort of like black and white Tim Burton mess, and you're like, it's like it's about justice. Okay, thanks, man.
Stark might if Stark finds out he's my secret Santa, he might just throw me an Iron Man suit because he's like, oh crap, I didn't plan for this.
And I've got a billion of them. Here's one.
Right. Or he'll give me money. It's either money or an Iron Man suit. And either way, I'm sitting pretty. I'm in.
Oh man, an extra cap shield he's got lying around, like a prototype he was putting together.
Yes.
So before we go, Sal, Man of Tomorrow, what, if anything, in this do you think they'll pull for the DCU Superman?
I think there's going to be a few, if not, like, I think there's going to be a bunch of references to like the whole Superman mythos and like multiple franchises. I mean, the fact that Miss Tessmacher is in it, like, which frustrates me because I'm like, why are you perpetuating this problem? Like worse yet, the only version that had the right one is the Man of Steel version, like Mercy.
Yeah.
Blow her up.
They blow her up, man. And they killed Jimmy Olsen in the same movie. What the fuck are they doing?
I hate it. But to actually answer that question, I think that there might, I mean, if ever Gus was going to show back up, it's going to be this movie.
Yeah.
Not as Richard Pryor, naturally, but like a character with the same name.
It'd be funny. I wonder if you could get a prominent comedian to reprise the role of Gus Gorman and just have that be a thing. We get one of the hottest comics around, or you know what you do, and I love this. One of my favorite things, we talked about this, so anybody that doesn't know, we have a show called Spider-Versity that you can find over at patreon.com/onlystupid-answers, and we talked about this when we did Spectacular Spider-Man. One of the things I love is Greg Weisman said there's not going to be a named character on the show that's not pulled from the comics. If you hear somebody's name, they're from the comics. And I love that, because at this point, when you're that deep, and Superman has an even deeper bench than Spider-Man does, when you're that deep, decades in, why bother? There's what you need exists. It exists somewhere. I think
you're right, and I think it's going to be this too. I think there's not going to be a character in the Superman Man of Tomorrow, or whatever the hell they call it. I think it's nothing. I think it's every character will have a name, and they'll have a place.
Yeah, but I think like, so if you have a scene where Superman goes to a comedy club or something, have the comic be Gus Gorman. You know what I mean? Just call it a day. Like that's your one little nod.
I completely agree.
Yeah. All right.
Oh, maybe robots.
Maybe, well, yeah, because we've got what is the engineer from the Authorities in there, who I feel like is going to be
the engineer is going to be in this movie.
I feel like that's our Metallo stand-in. Which, on the one hand, like I get it, you're doing the Authority, you're switching stuff up, but I still want a Metallo. Just give me Metallo, goddammit.
Well, I think if we ever, I mean, like if Superman doesn't bomb,
yeah,
and we get a universe out of this,
yeah,
and they fast track a sequel,
yeah,
it's gonna be Parasite, Metallo, or Brainiac.
Yeah. I'm still fingers crossed that maybe Brainiac will show up in this movie and we're just keeping it close to our vest.
That'd be nice.
Yeah. We'll see. Yeah, I do think, I think you're right. I think, especially since we're getting the engineer, we'll definitely get some robot stuff, some computer stuff.
Yeah.
I know it seems pretty likely we're going to get an evil Superman. There's that talk of Ultraman / Bizarro showing up.
I can't believe that would be a thing. I know it is, but I also can't believe that they're like doing an evil Superman.
I know. It's the one thing we always do, man. It's not just in Superman movies, in all these superhero
in every superhero movie. And I'm like, what are you, crazy?
Yeah.
Like, you have a million characters. Everybody's been waiting for it. You friggin' like name drop Justice League International, and you're gonna make up an evil Superman he's gonna fight?
Yeah, come on, dude.
He's gonna be arrested by the military again?
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah. So yeah, I think all that stuff, and then we will see. We'll see. Listen, man, we'll see. I do have a ranking thing here, like we did for the Academy, but I do think it's Superman 2, Superman 3, right? Like
that's, yes, yeah. It's only going to be like that.
Yeah, it's just going to keep each subsequent one is just going to be low.
Oh, the last one was the worst one. Yeah.
oh man. But seriously though, any of you Wednesday Warriors out there, Terminator 3, right? That's the one that's on the stands.
Yes, Terminator issue 3 is out on stands right now. Pre-order your issues up until issue 5. That's when my backup ends. Hopefully you'll enjoy it. Check it out.
Check that out. Sal, what other things should they be checking out from you?
Oh man, well, we just dropped an episode of Back Issues where we introduced there's a whole story arc where Venom has to transfer his symbiote to his ex-wife Anne, and she becomes the bride of Venom, or as they affectionately refer to her as She-Venom, which I hate.
Yeah.
I prefer the bride of Venom.
Yeah.
But Venom with boobs, so that's got to be something. That's got to be worth something for you folks.
Hey, listen, every time comics are in that movie, there's always like, wait, this is giving me weird feelings.
yeah. Well, it's like, yeah.
That's it. That's all we can say here. So anyway, you can find me. You're on this channel, DJ Talks Trash. Thanks everybody that watched live. Thank you all our super chat people, including once again Handsome Ransom, who says Alfred has stuff from Burma though.
That's right.
Kept the stuff from Burma.
He's got things from, he's got a ruby the size of a tangerine.
That's a good scene, man. Dark Knight's good. That's a good movie.
It's a good scene. I make fun of him a lot because he's got such a ridiculous accent, but also because he's such a like crybaby in the third movie. Like he's so great and cool and down, and then the third movie they're like, "Don't be Batman," and I'm like, "This sucks. What have you done?"
But yeah, so you're on DJ Talks Trash. You can follow me at DJ Talks Trash everywhere that matters. Increasingly on Blue Sky. Anybody that's over there, because every once, I don't know about you, Sal, every once in a while I'll especially retweet something, I'll go back on Twitter and immediately be reminded like why I'm not on Twitter. Like, oh my god,
dude, yeah,
it's absolutely. real bleak over there.
Yeah.
If you want to check out my thoughts on Craven, check out the next episode of Only Stupid Answers, which will be dropping on Monday. That's at youtube.com/onlystupidanswers or everywhere you listen to podcasts. And again, if you want more shows like this show, like Mutant Academy, Spider-Versity, stuff like that, you can do that over at patreon.com/onlystupidanswers. And also for anybody that backed my Kickstarter for the Hellbent Complete Edition, those packages are out. This baby is headed your way. I'm really happy with the way it came out. I hope you all enjoy it as well. So keep your peepers peeled on your mailbox and your email inbox. And we'll see you all next time. Bye, everybody.